Hello guys, Kurt here from Generation X Podcast. I'm at my friend Kenny and Cariann's house. They live on Little River, and if you're from Camden, you've probably heard a little bit about what's going on with this TFM, I believe the chemical, pesticide they're calling it. They're putting in the rivers to kill the lamprey eels. Now I don't know a lot, I'm not a biologist, so I really don't know the impact lamprey eels have on ecosystems and how invasive they really are. But the concern is poisoning the groundwater. And the other concern was it was on the hush and the down low, and the local community really didn't know what was going to go on with this stuff. And they can't come right out and say it's 100% safe. They say that sunlight breaks it down and it runs downstream, but it's no guarantee that's going to happen. So I will put a little topo map here so you can see how Little River runs, and you can imagine the amount of people that live on this water system here have wells and they rely on clean groundwater. So this is the big issue. Cariann just got done being interviewed by Channel 5 News, so keep an eye out on that. They scooped me. I was going to be here earlier, but she had stuff to do before they got here, so they just left. I'm here now. So we're gonna go in and talk to her and see what's going on. Before we get into her interview, check out the topo map so you can kind of see how Little River runs. And there's a lot of little tributaries coming in and out of it. A lot of places for this chemical to get and seep into the ground. Check it out. All right, guys, we're in the house with Cariann, and she's the one under Dr. Cariann Ray in the Camden paper, Queens Central News in town. She wrote a nice article about her concerns. Now she's going to explain exactly what she's concerned about and other people that might be concerned. So what's the issues?
Alrighty, so thanks for coming. So basically, we're dealing with an issue here in our town, and it's actually come to my knowledge that we're actually having this issue all over New York State. Just so everyone can understand a little bit of how it all happened, if they didn't read the article, the first one, because there are now two in the Queens Central. We had the unfortunate incident of people trespassing last May on our property, and they ended up being individuals from Canada, and they were here basically to start this what was called lampricide treatment. And of course we didn't know anything about what they were talking about, and they started to mention a chemical, which was obviously very concerning. And then all of a sudden the gentleman said that they're going to pour it in the river, and it was for this lamprey. And I said, well, we're on a well. And the first thing the gentleman said to me was, I didn't know you were on a well. I go, well then how can you be pouring something in the water when you don't know where it's going? I said, I think I need to talk to your boss. So I talked with their boss, from Canada on the phone, and he basically told them to leave the property. And I guess they went back home, actually, to Canada or wherever they're from.
Can I ask one quick question?
Absolutely.
Why were people from Canada here doing it?
Because we have, I guess it's a collaboration between New York State DEC, Fish and Wildlife, and with Canada, because this was a huge issue in Canada, and a lot of the Great Lakes are barriers between Canada and the US. So Canada was doing this project, I guess, beforehand, so they kind of piggybacked with them. And the person who's in charge, as far as I can see, of the whole program is a gentleman who lives in Michigan, and I can talk about him a little bit later.
Okay.
So this isn't just an issue that's a Camden issue on my little tiny river,
Right,
hence
it's a
little
big,
river.
big issue.
This is a huge issue. So anyway, they left, and I was obviously really concerned about it. So about 2 weeks later, I went down to the Camden Town Board meeting, and I just asked if they knew anything about it, and I literally had deer in the headlights from every single one of them, who have all lived here, some of them 60, 70, 80 years.
Big names in town.
Yes. So immediately they were all shocked, some horrified, and then Dan Christmas, the town supervisor, he made a phone call with the number I gave him to the guy who was in charge in Canada. And then Dan called me and said, I just wanted you to know I did talk with him. They're not coming back to your river this year, and we're gonna try to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, thank you. And I didn't hear anything else. So it was kind of quiet. And then in March, I got the phone call that they were coming to the town board meeting, and can I be there? So I went, and I had done a little more research in the interim about what this lamprey was and what this whole program was all about, and it just kind of got my heart palpitating even more and more. And then I was preparing for the meeting and just started looking at the actual chemical, where they're doing it, the effects of the chemical, and then actually even finding very quickly some information on kind of their protocol of what they're supposed to be doing and things they have to do in order to get renewal for their license. And I was like just dumbfounded, because I'm like, none of these things are happening. And I said, or maybe it's happening other places, but it's definitely not happening here. So I took all my information to that meeting, and we also invited Jason Lamb, who is not only a lawyer in town, but also he's on the board for the town of Vienna, which this house is in the town of Vienna, but then right at the bridge becomes Camden.
Right.
So this issue is running through Camden water, Vienna, it's going everywhere. So I went to the meeting, and this gentleman showed up, and there was a woman from the DEC and a gentleman from Fish and Wildlife from New York. And they tried to do a presentation, it didn't really work. And they basically, it was like being on a field trip, that they thought they were gonna do this cute little presentation about what a lamprey was, and oh, they're so awful and evil, and aren't we great because this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
He even had plastic ones that he was like gonna hand out to people. So their viewpoint of why they were there was definitely different from what they were really there for.
You guys had real concerns.
Yeah. So I can share with you that in his presentation, he had no data, no information about our rivers, dates, times, nothing, absolutely nothing. He just had a pre-made PowerPoint presentation that was literally something like you would see when we go to see the salmon run, and you go in the building and they have a movie playing. Yes, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. I told him I appreciated them coming, but I just didn't feel we were getting to the root of the problem. So they opened the floor for questions/concerns, and I kind of got the look from the board of, you're on.
Let's go.
Let's go. So I did, and I shared with him those concerns about everything that was happening. I shared the concerns about things that should be going on and weren't going on. And we ended up getting into a little bit of a back and forth, and he was making comments like, well, no one's told us there's ever been a problem. Well, how could we tell you if we didn't know it was happening? Mm-hmm. He was like, he admitted he didn't know who's on a well. He admitted they weren't sending out mailers. He admitted they didn't tell the town. He admitted they didn't tell the water department. He admitted they had trespassed on my property 6 months prior. So he admitted to all of these things. And that was obviously concerning that he admitted to all of this. So then after that, he started to talk about, oh, well, this isn't a big deal. This chemical goes away and all of this. And then that's when I brought my research with me. And I'm like, this chemical doesn't just go away.
Mm-mm.
I said, this is a toxic, hazardous, top level poison. I said, and I know when you guys are bringing it over the border up near A Bay, they're wearing hazmat suits to take it off the truck in the big barrels. I said, there's protocol for what you have to wear in order to even be around this chemical. I said, and it's all protocols for workers, obviously, so that you don't have a problem with the worker getting injured. And it's all about the skin, inhaling it, ingesting it, your eyes, all these different things that can happen. And the side effects can all be from psoriasis, eczema, skin blisters, bleeding, nosebleeds, ear infections, eye infections, nerve problems, you name it. All of these things that can happen to you with just an exposure. So I said, we're not even in our situation, you used a sprayer or you dumped or whatever you did. I go, we live here.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is our home. I go, and that is going into our well that we are showering, bathing, eating, drinking. It's everything. Watering our flowers, our vegetables. Our pets are swimming in it. Our family's fishing in it. We kayak in it. I go, I just don't understand it. And he said, well, you know, we tested on a rat for 24 hours and it seems like the rat's fine after that. And I'm going to tell you that there was quite a few people there for different reasons, but if every person in there didn't kind of go like
They
that,
couldn't believe what they
couldn't
heard.
even believe that it like literally just came out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that concept probably 2 or 3 times, and at the last time I said, I'm going to ask you to stop referring and comparing me to a rat. I'm really going to ask you.
Did you say that?
I did. I
Good
said,
for you.
Please stop doing that. But anyway, so we did agree as far as the town that there was a lot of things that needed to be taking place, and they weren't. And then the meeting kind of got over with, and this gentleman from Canada basically is like, yeah, well, we're going to be back in a few weeks, just, you know, start the program. And it was like in one ear and out the other. And I just looked, I was like, I'm like, okay, I don't even know what just happened here. So the Queen Central was like, he almost tackled me. He's like, I have to talk to you. So the Queen Central, we did that, and he was like, I'm putting this article in. I said, I would prefer you not use my name. It's more about the issue than me. So he did for the first article, and he had a really good response from it. And then the next day after that meeting, I couldn't sleep. I was just horrified. And I just kept doing more and more research about the chemical, about what they're doing, where they're doing it. And I start finding information, and I start pulling up maps and rivers. And I was like, I got so upset that I was like crying at my computer. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And the fact that he referred to this chemical as, it's just a yellow Mountain Dew working its way down the river.
That's a great explanation
Thank
right there,
you.
isn't it? What a
Fantastic.
stupid explanation.
It was great. So now that I'm in this stage of being really concerned, I start now thinking, well, I gotta reach out to people. So I better get a little more information. So I wrote a full summary of the meeting, what we felt should be happening, what I feel I would like to see happen. And then I got another article that I found from the DEC, New York State DEC. Can I share it with you?
I would love to hear it.
Okay, so the article's actually in this week's Queen Central, everybody. And again, shout out to the Queen Central because it's in there. It's a 2-pager, page 10 and 11. This is directly off the New York State website. I'm a visual person, so
Yeah.
I don't know if this is in your camera, if you can see it or not, so you let me know.
It's in there nice.
All right, so this is off of the New York State DEC website. Before treatment for using this pesticide, 1 year beforehand, you're supposed to assess if the lamprey eggs and our larvae are even in any of these rivers or tributaries, okay? I put a question because I don't know, they never shared it with us. 4 to 6 months before, you're supposed to notify residents. Not happening. 4 to 6 months, you're supposed to ask if those residents need alternative water. Not happening. 2 weeks before, you're supposed to notify the landowners that it's happening. No, not happening. 1 week before, this is a good one, provide fencing for livestock and an alternative water source for the livestock. Not happening. 1 week before, you're supposed to activate a free hotline for information. Not happening. A few days before, you're supposed to walk the stream to assess obstructions. Now, I put a question mark because I don't know if they're walking the streams, but as far as obstructions, I can name about 7 beaver dams that are just right down here. There's so many obstructions here, it's not even funny. And then a few days before, you're supposed to publish a treatment schedule, both in the paper and in the media. Not happening. Which obviously everyone said is not happening. Even the Oneida County Health Department, who was contacted, didn't know it was happening. This is also supposed to happen. It doesn't end, it keeps going. A few days before, am I still in there, Kurt?
Yes, you are.
All right, they're supposed to test the water and the stream and the flow and all of that. I put a question mark, and obviously with ours, we have a huge area that is not part of the river, but that's the overflow, and that's where our well water is going to come from because it's standing water.
Right.
1 day before, again, you're supposed to notify households and provide them with water. Not happening. 1 day before, you're supposed to post water use advisories at stream and lake postings. Not happening. 1 day before, you're supposed to broadcast an advisory on the radio. Not happening. And 1 day before, you're supposed to retest the water, or 1 day you're supposed to retest the water so that you can make sure that your toxicity of this toxic chemical is adequate for the water and the levels and or whatever's in the water for that day. And they are not testing wells. They're supposed to give you an option to have your well tested before, during, and after, and that's not happening. So all of that is supposed to happen beforehand, just before.
And that's all off the DEC website.
Directly on the DEC.
Yep.
Well, we're not done. They're also supposed to do during treatments, chemical monitoring, I don't know. They're supposed to follow the chemical plume, this is their wording, down the stream. Now, what I find interesting is I'd like to know how you're supposed to follow that. Are they getting in a kayak or
A freaking helicopter or something?
Helicopter.
You're not getting down this creek
Like,
in a kayak
how
without
do you
cutting
know you're
trees out of the
following
way.
it? Where is it going? Okay, so that's why I underlined that. They're supposed to verify that the lamprey have been treated. I don't know. And then after the treatments, you are supposed to assess the mortality of the lamprey. So I don't know if that's where they catch them somewhere or they
They
pick
must
them
have
up.
net them or something.
I don't know, so I'm not sure. But again, you would have thought that that would have been more of the presentation. This is the one that I just can't even believe that someone could put this in here. You are to assess the non-target species 1 day afterwards.
See, that was going to be my next follow-up question. What's it doing to the native fish, the birds, the turtles, the snakes, the frogs? What's it doing to all that?
They have no idea. And I would like to know, like, did you see that there was a duck that just came up and landed? Did you tag it, follow it, go find it,
Yeah.
test it? Did you test the eggs that are sitting there in the nest and come back to see if those babies are deformed? What about the venison meat and someone's eating it? So I just don't even, it's like something that you're putting, it's writing a check you can't cash. This is making a promise that can never be, you can never keep this promise. So, and then they're supposed to monitor the toxicity in the water so that they now can lift the advisory, and that's supposed to be done on the radio, paper, and direct contact, again, with landowners. Not happening. Not happening.
That's ludicrous. Now, how
None
many
of it.
people in this community that live with wells in the water system, especially Little River here, have you talked to that have concerns?
Well, basically what's happening is I think people are starting to talk with each other. My name wasn't officially in there until just now to the Queen Central. And even then, some people might not still know who I am, not because I didn't grow up here. So what's happening though is Kenny said even yesterday, he was, somewhere and someone started talking about it. And then I was someplace else and someone said my husband was talking about it. So it's out there and people are talking about it. And the thing is that it's not just about a well. These rivers go through all the campsites down on Oneida Lake. They go through over in McConnellsville where people have camps everywhere and people are swimming and kayaking all the time. Our animals swam in that river nonstop. My dog was in that water from 6 months old till she was 12 and a half years old. So the sad part is, if it can get any sadder, the day in 2013 when they poured that in that river right there,
Mm-hmm.
she got in that day. And she's in it every day.
Right.
So she was in it, swimming, drinking. And you know what else? I took a shower that day. I drank water from my faucet that day.
Yeah.
So even if they want to try to say that this is, oh, it's 24 hours, it's 48, it's a week, it's this, it's that. Even if any of that were true and you could prove, which you can't, 1 day is 2 days too many.
2 hours is too much.
Exactly. So I said in the meeting to him, he had a water bottle sitting next to him. And I said, why don't you take that water bottle, pour that Mountain Dew plume that you call it,
Mhm.
and why don't you fill your water bottle up and
Well,
drink it?
would they treat water, rivers near their property and their land and near their wells?
Exactly.
Would they feel comfortable doing it?
Now, is that in there? And there, these are the treatment areas just for New York State.
Holy shit.
All of them. So anybody who watches this and says, oh, Fish Creek isn't my concern, or that's not really me,
It's all over the state.
the entire state.
That is insane. And the fact that they're not following protocol
Mhm.
should raise huge red flags.
Mhm.
And why are they allowed to get away with that?
Don't know, and I think after I did all of this and did more research, I was even more upset with the fact that when I started calling the DEC to say, you guys gotta help us here, like what's going on? And then to find out that the woman that was at our meeting was like the head person that I was supposed to talk to. And she sat there in that meeting and never once, like, they made me feel like I was crazy, or oh, you're making such a big deal, or oh, everything's fine. I'm like, who's it looking out for us?
What they didn't expect, Cariann, was they didn't know you and how you're research driven
Yeah,
and you don't let it go until you get the answer.
yeah.
The right answer.
Yeah.
Not the answer you want, but the answer, the real answer. And they didn't expect it.
No.
So this is powerful stuff you're doing here. So
Well, I can tell you this, the day after that meeting, I was so upset and I knew that I needed to go farther. So I contacted every state, senator, assembly, local, and I've heard back from almost everyone, either chief of staff or someone. So and they've asked for documents, and I've sent them documents. I've sent them summaries. I'm fairly certain Joe Griffo has been working with our local officials. They've been working with the Oneida County Health Department, trying to find out what's going on. And my goal is this week is to do follow-ups to those individuals, those elected officials. But I've also done a reach out to 2 individuals who sponsored the legislation for PFAS, which is another type of chemical that's used for basically flame retardant or Teflon and all of that. And in 2017, they passed this PFAS law that this chemical could not be added to products anymore. It was concerned with ground contamination. Well, it took till 2022, but again, at least someone's doing something. They came and we got a flyer in the mail that said some information, would you like your water tested? And we thought it was a scam. But I said, well, let me call the health department directly and see if they know anything about this. And they said, yes, it's for your area. They'll come and test your water and then they'll go from there. Well, I said, we won the, Willy Wonka lottery ticket, but we didn't get the chocolate bars. Instead, we got you're over the limit for the
Really?
chemical
a
in your
lot
well
over
water.
limit.
It's a lot of numbers and information.
Anything
A
over the
little
limit's
bit
bad.
too much for my knowledge to know,
Yeah.
but only that they called back and sent the paperwork and said, we have 2 options. If there was public water, they would have had to have connected us to it. Huge. Or 2, they had to put in a whole system, which they did. And they came here and they provided us with alternative water for almost 5 months. They put in a whole brand new system that basically treats it and clears it out. They then tested it for like another 4 months before they said it's okay. I still use a drinking service, so I'm still kind of freaked out. And now I'm finding out about TFM too, so I'm kind of glad I'm at least using it for my drinking, but I still shower in it and do all
So the
that.
nightmare you guys had to go through to get all that rectified and fixed,
Mhm.
you could potentially be looking at that again,
Exactly.
if not worse.
Worse, exactly, because yeah, and the thing is that contamination isn't something that's right here in my river. That's from just working through the ground.
Right.
So I obviously reached out to them to tell them what was going on, but also thank them for what they're doing. And I said, I really feel that as a society, we're so quick to blame people for not helping us, but you know what? If they don't know, they can't help you. So you can't just like say, oh, they are not doing their jobs or whatever. I really don't feel anybody knows what's going on. Because I will tell you that, number one, none of this is doable. You cannot do all of these things.
No, it seems impossible.
It's impossible to do. You wouldn't even be able to have the manpower or the database.
Logistically,
it's impossible.
Yeah.
So you're putting something up that looks and sounds good and makes everybody feel so great. It's a lie. It's all a lie.
It's a facade, is what it is.
Sure is.
That's exactly what it is.
So I was making a lot of headway that week, and I guess some stuff, scuttlebutt was going on, and I finally got a call from, I'm forgetting his last name. It's Michael Sefkes. He is the director of the Sea Lamprey Control Great Lakes Fishery Commission out of Michigan.
What do you have to say?
So he said he was preparing a written statement for me, but he knew it was going to take a little bit, so he wanted to know if we could talk, so he could, get some answers, questions, that kind of thing. So we talked about a week and a half ago for about an hour, and he was very nice. He was very knowledgeable. Probably would have been better for someone like him to come to the meeting. Probably would have been a little bit more helpful.
An expert.
However, he proceeded to basically admit to me that all those things I was saying and that charts I was just showing you and all those things, that they're not happening. Well, no, I guess they're not. Well, he didn't really say like how he was keeping track and then I couldn't believe he said it. He goes, well, you do know that we're an NPO, a nonprofit organization. So we don't really have the oversight and strict as rules as DEC does. And I'm on the phone, and if he could have seen my face, it was like one of those cartoon characters where their body goes like that and then comes back in. I go, is that really what you want to say to me right now? Because you're a nonprofit organization pouring toxic chemicals into waters, you don't have to follow the rules that the DEC sets forth for New York State in order to make sure that these toxic chemicals are handled properly. That's what you want to say to me right now?
It's insane, but think about this. You can come dump chemicals into a river, leave people in the dark, homeowners in the dark, not having any idea how it's going to impact everything downstream from it. But if you throw your McDonald's cup out your window on your way home from McDonald's and a cop sees you, you're going to get a ticket.
Oh yeah.
It's insane. What I'm hearing doesn't even make sense.
I think I talked with the gentleman from the Queens Central, and we kind of both admitted that if you had not been at that meeting in person and heard it for yourself, and I had just come into his office to share a story, he would have been like, this lady's loony, she's crazy. And I think that that's what everybody thinks. It's like, they're like, come on, no way, this can't be happening. So I proceeded to tell him the same thing. I said, when do you think I'm supposed to feel okay about it? I go, when would you feel okay about it?
Probably never.
Would you ever?
I wouldn't.
Right. I said, and when or if you do destroy our water, what then? What do? Pick up and move our home?
Yeah, you destroy lives.
Dig a new lake, dig a new pond, what do you do?
Well, think of the lives you're impacting, and not just the homeowners and the livestock and everything that lives around it. The fish, like I said, the fish, birds, turtles, snakes, frogs. What's it doing to all that stuff? You know what I mean? Kenny Duck comes down here. What's it doing to the ducks?
Well, and Dan Christmas made a good point at the meeting. He said, and I don't feel it's a notification just for landowners, which is why the DEC says that if they're on the stream, it's direct notification, but for everybody else, they're still supposed to be
This runs all through
public.
the village of Camden.
It's all public notification. And Dan Christmas says, How do you know a fisherman isn't sitting right there at the mouth of the creek when that stuff is going by and he doesn't even know it?
Exactly.
That, or a kid's swimming or someone's kayaking. That's why everybody needs to know. And the funny part, which is not funny, is that we're saying these things to the DEC and to this gentleman, and not one of them said, oh, well, no, you know, your point is so well taken because that's why the DEC says you're supposed to be doing it. So that she was right there. And she never once like owned up and said anything at all, and made me feel like, you know, I'm just this loony citizen that's making a big deal out of a little bit of nothing.
Well, you're the echo chamber and they want you to go away. That's
Yeah.
what the thing is, and you can't let it go until you get the answers that everybody deserves and needs. If it's not safe, it can't happen. If it's safe, prove it. That's all. That's all you're looking for. You're not saying, hey, stay off my property, don't throw chemicals in my property just to say it. You're saying it because you have a really, really big concern about it.
Well, and I asked them too, I know that they didn't treat Little River last year, but since then I've also found the treatment schedules. I found them. And I mean, Fish Creek has been treated last year and the year before, different areas. 2013 was the last time Little River, as far as this paperwork, was treated. But we talked about the fact that, you know, there are alternatives, which are barriers, because the lamprey can't jump over the barrier. So they hit the barrier, go down into a crevice, then they can collect them. Other fish can jump.
Yeah, there's got to be non-lethal ways to collect them.
Well, there's a bridge in McConnellsville. It's broken. They told us at the meeting that they knew it was broken. The people on the board were like, well, then fix it.
Yeah, I mean, how hard is it to go fix it? Where is it in McConnellsville? 'Cause
That I'm not sure.
I'd
But
like to see it.
different dams and different things, I guess, that's what they can do. They can build those. And don't quote me on this, but if I'm recalling the conversation with the gentleman from Michigan correctly, if you put the barriers up, the pesticide is not needed. So I'm sure the pesticide, though, they feel less expensive and so easy to do. But if you were ever to try to keep track and do all of these things that you're supposed to be doing, the money would be astronomical to do it. And then, not only that, but not only can you find the schedules now, I found a schedule, and all this is pretty much through the Michigan website, by the way, because it's very big up there, and that's where the issue is. And we're doing all of this here so that all those Great Lakes can have their brown trout. So poison us so you can have a nice...
Yeah, it's to protect the Great
protect
Lakes
them.
is what it is.
Yep.
Yep.
So and then you can even find the maps. You find the maps. And you don't need to read this, but to know that all of those are all different Great Lakes, and those are all different places that are being treated. And then here's us over here in Lake Ontario. So let me ask you this. If you're looking at the whole scheme of things, and if you're really worried about taking care of stuff, who do you think is going to get the end of the stick of who's going to be worried about? Us little guys over here with just a couple little spots. But you know what? That's not a couple little spots. That's a lot. And I said in the meeting that when he talked about it not being a problem and not knowing this or that, and I said, do you know what we have in common with other people? I said, we're a small rural town with people that enjoy the rivers, enjoy fishing, enjoy swimming, and are on these wells, and nobody's testing our water every year. Nobody comes to take a look at our stuff. I said, and then go take a look at all of the big, huge water suits that have happened in the past. With Hinckley, with Aaron Brockovich movie that made it famous.
Everybody thought she was crazy too.
Yep. And you had Civil Action that John Travolta did that movie that was about the lead up in Massachusetts.
Yep, I remember that.
And then you got Camp Lejeune. How many people see those commercials for the lawyers wanting the money? If you were on Camp Lejeune, and this is what I said to him, I said, you know how far back that goes, Mr. Morrison? They're going back to 1960. 1960. The Hinckley issue, that was back into the 50s. They were going back and looking into that. I go, we're just seeing those commercials for Camp Lejeune. We're in 2025.
It's true.
I said, I can tell you myself, legislation went into effect in 2017 for PFAS contamination, and they never came to my door till 2022. So all I'm saying is that what's it going to be? You started doing this in our area, you said in the 80s. Well, guess what? That hasn't been that long.
And that brings
Give it another 20 years, and then what?
Listen, I remember being a kid, and I grew up in the village of Camden, and I fished every inch of Mad River, Fish Creek, every little creek, tributary, you name it, more than once in my lifetime, especially when I was a kid in the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, where bullhead, whitefish were just floating dead. Hundreds of them. Hundreds and hundreds. So this is probably the result of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And not only fishing, but standing in the water up to my waist or swimming, taking a dip. It's dangerous.
It is.
It's very dangerous. And like you said, you can't look at the short term on this stuff. You got to look at the long term effects and what it's going to be 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now.
And we're here, I mean, you know that when something gets into sediment, once it's in that sand and in that sediment and in that muck, it just sits and it gets deeper and deeper. It's like quicksand. It's not this great little, huge whitewater rapid that's just gonna run it down and get it out of the way.
It's all wet down there.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the biggest part for me is that he can send me this gentleman and say, oh, well, we won't treat Little River this year, 2025. But then literally in his next breath is talking about, but next year maybe we can get some of these things settled. No. And I know I'm just one person, and I'm sure I can obviously be overridden as far as what they're allowed to do or not do, but if they were going to do it, then they should have to follow all these rules, and there's no way on this earth or anywhere that all of those things are ever going to take place, and they're not even doable, they're not feasible, they're not maintainable. And any money that they feel that they're saving by keeping the trout and bringing in the tourism and having the fishing industry would be completely wiped out by what they would have to spend to do the monitoring of the system. And if it is in fact true that barriers can be placed in these places, then that's what we need to be doing, and that's legislation that needs to go forward. And that's what communities need to be doing fundraisers for, doing whatever. Communities will bind together if
they would come together in a hurry to help out with stuff like that.
You want to put a barrier up here instead of poisoning my water? I'll help you.
You can get volunteers to help build the barriers.
Exactly.
For real.
Exactly. How many sawmills do we have around here?
Mm-hmm.
Sawmills of people who drink from this water.
That's right.
That would probably donate to the cause.
And as you know, how many years you've been living here?
Since 2009.
In that, it's a short amount of time actually.
Yeah.
But you realize how fast you become part of the community and how tight-knit this community is. So this is why we're getting this out there, so people around the town and the village can see exactly what's going on. And if they're not following all these rules and regs that they have in place to use this chemical, which it is a chemical, and nobody knows the dangers to humans or anything else, it's ridiculous.
No.
In 2 weeks you said they're going back?
Well, supposedly that's what that gentleman said at the meeting. I have in writing from the gentleman that he's saying he's not coming back to Little River, but there's still all these other ones.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if he's coming back for all of these. But, again, I think some people will put their head in the sand if they think it doesn't affect them.
Well, take a look at that list right there, people. If you're watching this, do you live anywhere near this? Any of these creeks, rivers? I guarantee you do. Everybody watching this video drives over one of these rivers or creeks every day on a bridge going somewhere.
Yep. So that's just how I feel. It's not just about me. And on top of it, just because someone tells me it doesn't mean that they're following through.
And the bottom line is this: you want answers. That's all you want. And until you get the answers, then they can't. I mean, they're going to, but you can keep them off your property and maybe keep them from dumping it into this creek by you to start with. But this is way bigger than I ever expected it to be. I didn't realize you were going to show me all this stuff. This is crazy to me. That is insane.
I know.
Unfreaking believable.
And you know, the sad part is what someone will say was, oh, we'll see, but you did find it. So, oh, it was posted somewhere. Number one, this was in Michigan, okay, website. And the only reason I knew that was because he emailed me and I looked at his title and then I Googled him and then that took me to that website, you know? So, you know, definitely this sounds, and the interesting thing is that, and the lamprey, they only supposedly, I think, reproduce once in a lifetime. That's
See,
it.
I didn't know that either.
I'm pretty sure from what
Yeah.
I've been reading. So they basically become adults, they live up in the Great Lakes, and that's where they feed. And then I think it's like 7 years in or something, 6, 7 years, they become ready to spawn. And they'll make their way to areas like rivers that are quiet and safe. And then they'll leave the eggs, and then the female will go, and then from what I've read, the female dies. Then the male will come, and then the male will die. And that's what I said, and I think I wrote it in my article. It's like the chances of your 3 to 5 year time frame being in the right exact spot of where these eggs have just hatched, and the chemical goes over the top of that and happens to kill them so that they don't make their way out of these little rivers to get their way back to the big Great Lake, you know, big Great Lakes. Wow. I said, sign me up for that lottery ticket because
You just educated me a little bit. So they're trying to kill the eggs before they hatch.
it's not, at first I thought it was the eggs before they hatch. And then the gentleman from Michigan was like, well, not really. They kind of hatch and they're little small, like little.
And it kills them before
and
they
it
get back
kills
to the
them
lake.
before they can grow and get back. But again, like they're supposed to be collecting them, collecting the dead, monitoring them. And I said to that gentleman, I said, well, I mean, do you do that? Where's your data on that? And he's like, oh, I could come do a presentation and show people what we do and how we do it. I said, okay, when? You know, I know that's that thing that drives probably people crazy, maybe about people. I'm like that, but I'm that person where if you say you're going to do something, I'm going to have the follow-up to when, where, and how. Which is why you guys like me to plan our travel.
The best travel guide ever.
So all I can say to everybody is be educated and realize what's going on in New York State. Reach out to your elected officials because I guarantee you this is affecting you or someone that you know.
Well, trust me, and not just myself, but I'm guaranteeing that all the people that are going to watch this video are going to thank you for putting the homework and the time into this so we can get the answers. And this won't be our last interview. We get more information, you get more information, let me know. We'll talk about it, we'll throw it back out there until we get to the end result to find out what's going on. Keep everybody posted because this is really serious stuff. There's enough stuff in this world that'll kill you, and we don't need to be voluntarily throwing a chemical in the creeks that can get seep into the groundwaters and hurt people. It's ridiculous.
They want to pass legislation to tell you how big of a Slurpee you can get when you go to the
Exactly.
gas station.
Yeah.
This might be a little bit more.
Maybe
more,
that
just
much.
a little. Just kind of throwing that out there. So, but people can keep an eye out. News Channel 5, News Channel 3, and CW6.
You said they're going to do a teaser.
They might be doing a teaser this
This
afternoon,
afternoon?
and then tonight, if not, maybe tomorrow. And the gentleman said, I think we're going to be doing a little bit more on this from what I'm hearing. So
I
keep
agree.
an eye out for that.
All right, and we'll do more, you and I.
Okay.
So you get more information, text me, let me know, and we can sit for 5 minutes and just find out where we're at. And we'll keep adding to this story.
All right.
All right, thank you, Cariann.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.